Okay, we're about ready to begin. We are studying biblical reflections, the finding yourself in the stories of Genesis. Tonight, we will be wrapping up the first story, the story of the Garden of Eden, the story of Adam and Eve and the serpent. And that means that next week, we're going to begin the story of Cain and Abel. Just a scheduling announcement for this Wednesday. This Wednesday is what we would call Erev Thanksgiving. It's the Thanksgiving Eve, the eve before the holiday. I'm going to be doing a special lecture on Wednesday at 12:30, and it's about Thanksgiving 2020. It's a different Thanksgiving for us this year, and I just want to address it at 12:30 this Wednesday. You're all welcome to join. Join on Zoom. If you need a link, go to jewishacademy.com. The link will be there. We'll do it live on Zoom and on Facebook, and then I'll post it onto the YouTube channel. So those of you that follow on the YouTube will be able to watch it at any time thereafter. So Wednesday, 12:30, Thanksgiving 2020. We are going to focus on the consequences today, the consequences of what we call that original sin, the first sin, the only sin that could have possibly taken place because it was the only commandment that they have. Now, I want you to try to remember the first time you heard this story, wherever it may have been, Hebrew school, day school, later in life when you read the Bible. But the first time you hear the sin and you read the consequences, the punishments that come after, there is the sense that God was angry and therefore he punished them. But the problem we have with it as we get a little more mature and as we study Torah a little more deeply is that it doesn't work for us to believe that God punished them to get revenge, that he's angry, so he's going to hurt them. He's not this angry God that just wants to hit back at those who rebel just because he wants to show that he's stronger. It makes no sense when you think of God as infinite. An infinite God cannot possibly get any satisfaction from seeing us in pain. It just doesn't work. In addition, the Torah uses terminology throughout the 5 books of Moses of God as a father figure, as a parent figure. And a parent doesn't punish a child in order to get revenge, in order to cause pain. And if they do, we have a serious problem, and it's called child abuse. So if a parent gets so angry at a child that a parent uses force against a child, it's unacceptable in society. Because you're stronger, of course you can hurt that child. So what is the idea of punishment? What is the idea of there being a consequence from a parent to a child? And perhaps we can understand then when God is upset and God, quote unquote, punishes, and God brings us the consequences of our actions. So I think the better word to use rather than punishment is consequence, although the Torah does use that word punishment, but it wants us to understand that punishment is a consequence. It's a direct result of your action. More so, it's a path to bring one back to a healthy state, a healthy spiritual state in the case when we're talking about God. It's about undoing the damage that we did with the sin and to bring us back to a proper path. Ultimately, what God wants is the return. Not the pain, not that we're hurting. He wants the rectification. He wants the repentance. He wants the tikkun, the fixing, the mending, because what that will do is strengthen the relationship. With that definition in mind, let's take a look back now at the book of Genesis and look at the consequences mentioned in the text of the Torah. We're going to look at Adam, we're going to look at the serpent, and we're going to look at Eve. And what we want to try to understand is, why are these consequences a direct result of the sin? And how will they ultimately bring about this tikkun, to fix, to mend, and thereby bring us to an even higher state, a higher place than we were before the sin took place? So let's begin. We're going to start with Adam. We're going to look at reading number 4 of Hannah. Can you put that up on the screen? Thank you, Hannah. Reading number 4, text of the Bible. To Adam he said, the he here is referring to God, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree regarding which I specifically gave you orders, saying, do not eat from it, the ground will be cursed because of you. You will derive food from it with anguish all the days of your life. It will bring forth thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the grass of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat bread. Finally, you will return to the ground, for it was from the ground that you were taken. Sounds pretty severe to me. Sounds like that Hebrew school version of punishment, an upset God letting loose and really letting Adam have it. So let's begin first with Rashi, classic commentator in the Torah. Rashi asks the question, it opens with, the ground will be cursed. Hey, but why is the ground being cursed? If Adam is the one that ate, what do you want from the ground? If you recall from a few weeks ago when we first spoke about the earth and the creation of the tree, and that when the earth gave forth from a tree, there was a slight rebellion there. There's a verse in the Torah where the Torah has God saying to the earth, give forth a fruit tree with fruit. A fruit tree with fruit would mean that the tree itself tastes like the fruit, and then there is the mini fruit that you can take with you. But if you bit into the bark of the tree, it would taste like that particular fruit. So an orange tree would taste like an orange, and then there would be the fruit of the orange tree that you can pick off and take with you. But the tree itself would taste like an orange. The apple tree itself would taste like an apple. The plum tree, and onwards we go. That was the original instruction. But the earth rebelled. The earth didn't listen. And the earth gave forth a tree that had fruit. So the fruit tastes like the fruit, but the tree itself has no taste and is unedible. And we spoke about that then, that is where the beginning comes of rebellion. Where does man come from? God creates man from what? The body of man comes from the earth. The earth already had within it this ability to rebel. The body of man, therefore, has this ability to rebel within the body. So when God begins the consequence to the human being, he goes to the original source of the rebellion, and that was the earth. The earth is what ultimately was the beginning of bringing out the sin. The body which came from the earth, which had within it the potential to rebel. You see, there's a connection between our lives and earth. We come from earth. So long as our bodies were a vehicle for our soul, pre-sin, pre-Adam and Eve eating from the tree, all our bodies was a vehicle for the soul to do its needs. Its needs were all spiritual, and the body would fulfill it on a physical plane. At that point, there was no dichotomy. There was only unity. Body and soul worked in harmony together. Then we're fine. Then the earth is also then a vehicle for the spirit. The earth is then also a vehicle for the godly. And therefore, at that time in the Garden of Eden, the earth grew on its own, meaning the trees didn't need anybody. It just grew because the earth was fulfilling its spiritual need, and therefore it didn't need a farmer. It didn't need a human being to prune it and to fertilize it and to take care of it. It all grew on its own, and it grew perfectly. But now that through your action, man, You caused a wedge between body and soul. Now that body thinks of itself as independent, that it has its own needs and its own wants. The tree of knowledge of good and bad. Now you know things that you didn't know before. You feel things you didn't feel before. You desire things that you didn't desire before. Body and soul are now on different tracks. They're still going to have to work together, but they have different desires. They think a little bit differently. So now the source of the body, namely the earth, will also have this separation from its godly source. And it will no longer have this natural automatic growth. In order for the earth to grow, it will take effort, it will take work, it will take sweat. It's not going to be that easy to be a farmer. It's going to take a lot of work. Furthermore, the text says, you will also return to the earth. You picked up that line? From earth you came, and to earth you shall return. You remember when God spoke to Eve the first time and said, don't eat from it, because the day you eat from it, you will die. And people ask the questions, 1 second, Eve ate from it and she didn't die. So when God said to Eve, the day you eat from it, you will die, how is it possible that God didn't fulfill that which he said in the Bible? And for one of the opening chapters of the Bible, God says, the day you will eat from it, you will die. And she doesn't die. What they don't understand is the translation of these words. What God was saying to Eve, the day you eat from it, death will be introduced to the world. What Eve and Adam do with the consequence of eating from the tree is that now there will be something called death. On the day you eat from it, on that day, death will now be part of humanity, part of the world, which meant that up until that point, before the sin, man was eternal because man, body, and soul were one. Souls don't die. Souls live on. If the body was merely a vehicle for the soul, our body would have lived on eternally with the soul. But now that you separated body and soul, now that body is representing earth and soul is representing the spirit, and they're not in total sync with one another, now body will go back to the earth, body will go back to its source, and soul will go back to its source. The soul will go to heaven after death, the body will go back to earth after death. So death is introduced to the world on the day that you eat from that tree. That's the meaning where God is saying the consequence is death, not as punishment, but as a direct consequence, because now body is still earth. You have not overcome your earthly connection. Again, had your body remained a perfect vehicle for the soul, and being that the soul is eternal, the body would have been eternal as well. I'm not going to go completely into this subject right now of Mashiach, but just know that the belief system in a messianic time is that Mashiach means that we're going to return to the state of the world pre-sin. We're going to go back to a world the way it was when Adam and Eve came into the Garden of Eden. Our world will be Garden of Eden-like. The conditions of the world will be Garden of Eden-like. And therefore, we're going to go back to that state. Only, in fact, it will be a higher state than it was when Adam and Eve arrived, and that I'll explain towards the end of class today. But at that time, we will return to the body and soul being one unified entity. And thus, in our belief system of what Mashiach, the Messiah, represents, death will be eradicated. Because there will be no need to return to the earth, because body will be a vehicle for the soul, and as the soul is eternal, body will be eternal. The promise that Maimonides talks about in the Ani Ma'amin, in the resurrection of the dead, Ani Ma'amin, that I believe a part of Jewish faith, of the 13 principles of Jewish faith, is that when the Messiah comes, there will be the resurrection of the dead, that the body will come back to life and will once again be a home for the soul, will be a body that's not tainted by this sin, because Mashiach's coming will mean that we have cleansed the world of the sin of the Garden of Eden, and therefore the body no longer has the sense of independence. The body is just a vehicle of the soul and therefore will live on. Just to whet your appetite for A, studying more about Mashiach, and B, more importantly, to help bring Mashiach, because then we get to be with our bubbies and our zaydis and our tatis and our mommies and all of our loved ones as they will make their return. Reading number 5. Rabbi Shimon ben Eliezer said, "Did you ever see an animal or a bird that had a profession? Yet somehow they sustained themselves without pain. There's very little effort. Now, if they were created to serve me, if the animals were created to serve the human being, and I am created to serve my master, I'm here to serve God, shouldn't my livelihood be without pain? If the animal gets to do it easily, why not me? It is only that I corrupted my actions, and as a result, I made my livelihood more difficult." So Rab Shimon ben Eliezer is talking to us about the verses said to Adam. Let me explain. An animal, whatever animal you want to pick, they don't go to school to learn how to earn a living. They don't go to kindergarten. They don't go to elementary school. They don't go to high school. And they definitely don't go to college. And yet, they go out and they somehow get food. They learn, they know how to hunt for food. That's their livelihood. And no one taught them how to do it. Now, if the animal would wait 4 years to get a degree, to first get a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree, how to earn a living, it would be dead by the time it finished college. The animals don't have jobs. What do they have? They have natural inclinations. The more you study this, by the way, it's miraculous, and it obviously shows that there is a God involved in every animal. That the baby animals are born and they have certain knowledge built in, certain intuitions that they simply know. And every animal is different. They know what they need to do on day one. They have this built-in knowledge of it. And every animal has to know different things, how they're going to survive. How does a giraffe know how to stand up? I mean, you can ask this question about every single animal. How does it know what to do? Yet it knows. And it learns from its mother real quickly how to hunt, and it goes out and it hunts for food. And they break these animals in really on a few days after birth. They're already teaching their animals how you're going to survive. The animal already knows which other animals to hide from, how to hide from those animals, where to hide from those animals, which animals it's easy for them to hunt to eat. And yet it does it without going to school. So what the Talmud, the question the sage was asking is, it's not fair. How come the animals, they don't have to struggle so much? And even us, human beings that are here to serve God, we struggle so much more to earn a living. And even if we're born into wealth, so we're not struggling to earn a living. We have stress. We have other worries. We never have peace of mind. The human being is constantly filled with stress and anxiety and pressure. Why? Said the sage, because of that original sin of Adam and Eve. God created the world in 4 categories. We can divide the world into 4. There's something called domem. Domem is inanimate objects, the stone, the minerals within the earth. Then there's something called someach, that which grows, vegetation, plants, trees. Then there's chai. Chai are living animals, not the human yet. Chai are all animals. And then there is the medaber, the one that speaks, the human being. Now, the way God set this up are these four categories: domem, tzomeach, chai, medaber, inanimate object, growth, living animals, and the human being. Each level supports the higher form of life. So it's like a ladder. Inanimate objects feed the growth. The minerals allow things to grow. Growth feeds the animals. The animals eat from that which grows in the ground. Animals feed the human. And the human elevates it all in their service to God. So why shouldn't it then be easy? Every aspect of creation should be begging us to elevate it and therefore work for us. The growing of the field should be easy. Why? Because it wants to be elevated. The animals, when you go fishing, they should all be lining up and saying, pick me, pick me. I want to be your gefilte fish for Shabbos. Anything that we do should be easy. Why? Because ultimately man's job is to elevate it all. So we are the purpose here of creation in order to elevate all aspects of creation, even the minerals in the earth, even that which grows in the field. The spinach out there should be saying, please, like Popeye, please eat me. Why? Because I want to be elevated. So why the difficulty? Reading number 6, Hannah, if you could put that up on the screen. Thank you, Hannah. It would have made sense for man's physical needs to come easily to him, as creation itself should assist in his survival. Animals should have been available to him for his needs without any challenge, and all other parts of creation should have been waiting to serve man's needs. After all, it's in the best interest of the environment to avail itself to man, as there is a great benefit to it from man's engagement with it. Yet we see otherwise. Animals run away from man. Making a living is a challenge. The true reason for this is that while the godly sparks which are embedded in creation want to be elevated by man, they sense when man is not on a level where he could raise them up. So the sparks run away from man. Animals, on the other hand, don't corrupt their actions. They act the way they're created to act. Therefore, the sparks which are embedded in vegetation are easily available to animals, as the animals raise those sparks to a higher state than they were while being trapped in a vegetative life. So let me explain this. If the human, us, were to function body and soul in sync, then indeed it would be, as I said, if you went fishing, the fish would be lining up and saying, please elevate me. The animals would say, please use me. Why? Because the human being will elevate them, their purpose of existence, right directly to God. But because body and soul are separated, and when we eat, we're really eating to satisfy our own desire. We're not doing it the way it's meant to be, that we're only eating in order to serve God. We eat because we're animalistic and we like to eat. So the animal says, what makes you more special than me? Maybe I should eat you. And when I read this, I begin to understand. I now understand why dogs chase me wherever I go in the world. It's a known fact. Of those that are close with me, you will see wherever I walk, dogs, I pass by a dog and the owner can say it's the nicest dog. They're so sweet. They love all people, not me. When they see me, they bark, they scream, they yell, they want to bite me. It's been since I was a child. Dogs chase me all over the world. Wherever I go to Israel, dogs chase me there. I go to Tzfas, and the alleyways in Tzfas, dogs are coming out of the woodworks. See, it says it right there, because the dog, they don't recognize us because our body and soul are not in sync, and they see that in us. And therefore, it's our own fault. But when the animal wants to eat from the vegetation, there's no conflict. Why? Because to the vegetation, the animal is perfect. The animal is just being an animal, and animals are meant to eat vegetation. Minerals are meant to serve the earth. Everything is meant to be, and it functions properly. It functions right. Where is the breakdown? The breakdown is man. When we don't function as we should, as the body in perfect sync, as a vehicle for the soul, then all of creation senses there's something wrong with this man, and it rebels against us. And we have all environmental problems, and we have difficulties perhaps with nature, because nature is looking at us and saying, you're not living up to what you're supposed to do. Every physical creation, when I say every, I'm not just talking about human beings. Every physical creation contains a divine spark that's trapped within it. And that divine spark sustains its existence. If it didn't have that divine spark, it would not exist. It only exists because it has the divine energy within it, and it's trapped within it. When a creation is utilized for a good purpose, the spark within it is redeemed, and it's free to transform the physical surroundings in which it was encased. So in this ladder of spirituality of the world, vegetation is dependent upon earth. Vegetation is dependent upon rain. Vegetation is dependent upon sun. And so when vegetation grows, it also brings out the spirituality of the inanimate world. It's raising it up. It's raising up its sparks. When animals now eat the vegetation that came because of the minerals, that became because of the rain, that came because of the sun, and now the animal is eating that which grew from all of that energy, guess what it does? It releases those sparks of spiritual energy from the vegetation world, and it now brings it within them. And then when humans benefit from the animal world, it elevates the world of the animal, the world of the vegetative, the world of the inanimate. We elevate the entire environment. That's so long as we live up to what we're meant to live up to. This is why we make a blessing on food. It's not just saying the thanks. It's the fact that through this, all of creation is being elevated. But after we sinned, the sparks became more deeply exiled and harder to find and harder to release. It's not this automatic anymore. We're going to need to work hard to bring them out. We're going to have to dig into it to find the sparks. Pre-sin, all that man did was elevate. We just elevated just by being. Post-sin, now man has his own desires as well. So revealing the spiritual doesn't come as naturally for him as it did before. That's what God is saying to Adam. Direct consequences of your actions. It's going to be more difficult now, but it's still going to be beneficial. Yeah, you're going to work hard, but at the same time, you're going to be elevating those sparks. Yes, there's going to be death, but ultimately the world will bring itself to perfection, to mend the mistake made and bring the world to a higher level, and there will be a messianic time where we will come back to the Garden of Eden. These consequences are also the remedy. By us having challenges in earning a living, what does it do to us? We become more humble, perhaps less lazy. We become more dependent. Dependent on whom? Dependent on God. And consequently, we become more sensitive to God. Do you know why? Because we need him every day. The virus is a terrible thing. There's nothing, it's hurt our lives, but at the same time, it's given us awareness that we need God, that we can be threatened by something that we can't even see, that you need a microscope to see, and it can threaten an entire world. What stops it from happening again and again and again? So when we need, what it does is there's a humbling. The fact that in order to put breakfast, lunch, or dinner on the table, I need to go out and humble myself and work. Whether it's working to earn the money to buy it, or it's to make the food, prepare the food, all of this takes effort. And guess what? If it doesn't rain, there won't be any orange juice, and there won't be any wheat, and there won't be a bagel. So I really need it to rain. But you know what? I haven't figured out how to do that yet. I need God to do that. So we turn to him and ask for his assistance and his help. We need protection from the locust. We need a good season for success at work. And this sensitivity and this humility is what leads us back to God. I mentioned the word bagel before. Not that I'm hungry right now for a bagel, but bagels are always good. I don't know why bagels became a Jewish food. I don't know if the Jews invented, the Jews just like it, but it's like bagel and Jews go hand in hand. Well, there was a wealthy businessman from Warsaw. He would do his business every month in Krakow, in the Krakow market. And on each of his visits, he noticed this pious widow. And she would have this little stand in the marketplace, and she would sell bagels. She would sell these warm rolls. And the entire time she would be reciting from a book of prayers, from a book of Tehillim, a book of Psalms. She would only lift her eyes from her prayer book when someone would come along to buy a bagel. The other time, she's just sitting and davening, and she's praying, and she's praying. And then after someone would come to buy a bagel, for the next 10 minutes, all she would do is she would pour on the blessings on this individual, bless them and bless them and bless them. And as soon as she finished with this customer, back to the prayer book. So this Krakow businessman keeps, every time he comes to the marketplace, he sees this scene, this elderly woman with this beautiful prayers that come forth from her mouth. And she's mooching, she has to earn out a living by selling these bagels. He's a wealthy man. So he goes over to this woman and he starts a conversation with her and he asks her this question. On an entire month, how much do you earn from selling your bagels? And she told him how much she earns. And he said, I'm going to double your salary. I'm going to pay you every month, twice your monthly earnings, but on one condition. Quit the bagel business and just pray all day. Your prayers are so beautiful. Have me in mind. Pray for me, pray for you, pray for all the people. But don't work selling bagels. You're beyond that. I will take care of your needs. She started crying tears of joy. She accepts this generous offer. She thanks the man with praise and gratitude and blessing, and he gives her the first installment, the next month's salary, double what she made, but no more bagels. Just pray all day. A month later, the man is back, and he's shocked to see in the marketplace the woman is back by her bagel stand. Con artist, huh? I thought she was holy. There she is. She took my money, and yet she's there with our bagels. Again, the Tehillim in the hand. So he makes his way over, and the moment she sees him, she says, I was waiting for you. I was waiting for you. She hands him back his envelope of the prior month and says, I can't take it. The deal is off. I don't want the deal anymore. I can't take the deal. I want my bagel stand. Here's your money back. He says, no, I'm not taking it. A deal's a deal. You made a deal with me. So she said, the reason you offered to support me was for me to benefit from it spiritually, that I should be able to pray all day. That's why you did this. But let me tell you what happened. Ever since you made this deal, my prayers have been just off. I don't feel them. When I have my bagel stand, my prayers are far more powerful. They come from the heart. Why? When I have a bagel stand, every day I get up in the morning and I say, God Almighty, please make it rain. I think of all the farmers who planted the wheat for my bagels. I sing praises for the glory of rain. Every time it rains, I don't stop thanking God for every single raindrop that comes down. And then when the clouds pass and the sun comes out, I once again thank God because now the farmers are able to have the rays of the sun to help their crops grow. And when I would grind the flour and sift it again, I would find reason after reason to thank God. And when the bread would bake in the oven, again, I would be thanking God for the beauty of the product, for the sweet smell of the fresh bread. And then I would thank God that customers should come to the marketplace and buy my bagels. The entire day was filled with thanking God. You come along, you took it all away from me. You just give me an envelope and the money is there. Now I don't thank God for the rain and for the sun and for this. I don't want this. That's not the life I want. So there is a blessing in the fact that we have to work for things. You know, what do we call? We call a spoiled child. It's not a good word to use, but we use that terminology as parents, right? The child is spoiled. What does that mean, spoiled? Is a child like milk? It gets spoiled? What means spoiled is if we're going to provide and provide and provide and they never learn to work for something, something's going to be lacking in their maturity. There's just this expectation that everything is going to be there for them. So when God tells Adam, you're going to have to work hard, yeah, it appears as a consequence, and it is a consequence of his actions. But at the same time, there's a blessing there too. Let's move on to the serpent. Reading number 7. What does God say to the serpent? God said to the serpent, because you did this, cursed are you more than all the livestock and all the wild beasts. On your belly shall you crawl, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. That's what God says to the serpent. What kind of curse is this? If the serpent could now crawl on its belly, it's going to become a snake, and the snake is able to live on dust, then the snake never needs, because it could never go hungry. Why? Because it can eat dust. So where's the curse? And the answer is because it doesn't need, he'll never have a relationship with God. No need, no dependence, the very opposite of man. By man, the curse is the blessing. By the serpent, the blessing is the curse. As an example that I just gave you, if a parent says, here's all the money you'll need in your life, and gives a child everything they ever need, but then the parent says, but just get out of here. I never want to see you again. You have a bank account with everything you'll ever need, but I don't want to have anything to do with you. Is that a blessing or is that a curse? So you can say he has all the money he'll ever need. It's a blessing. No, it's not. Because what a child wants more than anything else is the relationship with a parent. That's the curse. The physical embodiment of the serpent became the snake. The snake is the most evil of animals in its characteristics because it doesn't bite to eat. It bites to bite. And the spirit of the serpent is the evil inclination. And that moved out of the serpent and became part of our existence. So the physical aspect of the serpent became the snake. The spiritual aspect of the serpent, of what the serpent represented, became part of each and every single one of us humans. It lives within us. Now, we can either nourish it, we can starve it, or we can get it to change teams. Nourishing it means we give in to all of its cravings. Whatever it wants, okay, I'll get it for you. It decides, it desires something, I'll get it for you. It lusts after something, I'll go after it. Why? Because it wants. That's nourishing the evil inclination. If I nourish the evil inclination, that's not a healthy thing. Because then what happens is I am giving it energy. Last week I explained that with every single time I give into it, it has more power and more power and more power and begins to take over the body. And it becomes more and more difficult to fight it later because it has now control. It's literally as if there's a civil war that takes place within our psyche. And the more we give into it, the more power that side of our psyche has. It doesn't mean it's ever too late because we can always fight back. We can always bring in reinforcements to the soul, but it becomes more and more difficult. So that's option one. We nourish it. That's not a good thing. The next thing is to starve it, which means deny it energy. How do you deny it energy? I know I want, but I'm not giving into it. Why? Because the Torah told me not to. I will only do that which the Torah allows me to do. And if what you're asking me for, what you're desiring for, what you're lusting for is something that the Torah and God told me not to, I will not give into you. And thus we lessen its energy. And it lessens and it lessens and lessens. That's what we call starving it. Hasidus comes along and says there's a third option, which is the best option. And that is, don't starve it. Get it to change teams. Because it is energy. If we can get that evil inclination to suddenly want to do good, it's a powerful force of energy. And what Hasidus teaches us is not how to starve it, but how to transform it, how to keep the energy and use it for the good. We're going to move on now to the third one. We said Adam, and then there was consequences to the serpent. Now let's get to the woman. Reading number 8. To the woman, God said, I will greatly increase your anguish in pregnancy, and it will be with your anguish that you will give birth to children. Your yearning will be to your husband, and he will dominate you. This is obviously a quite controversial verses in the Torah. Let's start with the childbirth. Childbirth is difficult. Why does it have to be painful? If it's not punishment, if it's consequences, why does it have to be painful? That feels like punishment. Pre-sin, Adam and Eve got together. They had sexual relations. She conceived a child, and a baby came out 1, 2, 3, meaning there was no pregnancy. It was immediate. Man did what they had to do to bring a child into the world, and boom, conception, everything took place rather quickly. Post-sin, there's a long process. There's a process of development. It takes 9 months for it to process. There's something called pregnancy. Pregnancy is not easy. It's 9 months, and there's a reason we call it labor, because it takes a lot of labor and in order for there to be delivery. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of effort, and it's painful effort. But the focus is not the pain. And the proof is if the Torah was trying to say that childbirth must be painful, then Jewish law would not allow women to have epidurals. Jewish law would not allow Lamaze classes, but it does. Jewish law says in every possible way that you bring comfort to a pregnant woman, you bring comfort to a pregnant woman. Any type of way that you could bring comfort to her, you do so. So God didn't decree pain. It's our tasks as humans to minimize pain wherever we possibly could. But there is hardship associated with pregnancy, with all aspects of pregnancy. His father in the waiting room, and he's pacing back and forth. He's in the waiting room of a hospital. His wife is giving birth. And the nurse comes in and says, Mazel tov, it's a girl. And he says, oh, thank God, she'll never have to go through what I just went through. You know, for us men, that's the pain of is the anticipation and the stress. It makes us crazy. So, thank God it's a girl. She'll never have to experience this. Pain and hardship of the verse that God says to Eve means that there is something incompatible. Something is fighting this. Childbirth is being fought. There's an obstruction, and therefore it's hard. What is that obstruction? What's fighting it? Evil itself is fighting it. Evil doesn't want another child in the world, because another child in the world means another godly soul in the world. Another godly soul in the world means more energy to the godly side. So evil itself fights every pregnancy. It doesn't want another human being created in the image of God brought into this world. Let's go back pre-sin. Pre-sin, the world is only about godly souls and bodies elevating the world. Post-sin, the body says, I don't need an additional life coming here and disturbing my world. And besides, this brings to this world another godly soul. The evil energy created by the sin brings about a force that attempts to stop goodness. What is the most powerful source of goodness in the world? The birth of a child. So there is a physical effect that the sin has had on an attempt to bring a child into this world. And that's what's felt during childbirth. And when the woman with the knowledge of this pain nevertheless goes through with it and has a child, she is thereby undoing the power held by this evil inclination. The power hold of the evil energy itself is weakened. She's fighting it. She's battling it. She's undoing some of the strength she gave it by eating of the fruit of the tree. She's rectifying that sin by battling the inclination, by saying, although having this child is going to cause me discomfort for 9 months, and going through the actual childbirth is going to be extremely painful, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm not going to listen to the forces of evil that says, don't bring another child into this world. I'm going to do it. It's interesting. It says in the Torah that a woman brings a sin offering after she has a child. Why does she bring a sin offering? I understand she brings an offering in the days of the Holy Temple of Thanks. That was one of the offerings she brought. Why is there a sin offering included in that? So it says, because while she's there on the delivery table and she's giving forth to it, bringing a child into this world, she swears that she'll never do this again. This is the last child I'm going to have. And she yells at her husband, don't you ever get near me again. We ain't doing this again. And then she calms down and she wants to have another child. So because she took an oath, so to say, she has to bring a sin offering to annul the oath that she took when she was in the mood of saying, I'm never going to be with you again because we're never having a child. And so there is the powerful energy that she brings to the world by overcoming the difficulty in pregnancy, the difficulty in childbirth, and thereby with the birth of every child, she weakens the strength that the serpent received when she gave in to eating from the tree. Now let's conclude with the controversial part of that paragraph, and that was the last words. The last words were that part of the quote-unquote punishment and the consequence of the sin was, and he will dominate you, that you will be the weaker of the two sexes, which meant that up and pre-sin, there was no such thing that man was stronger than woman, that man was more dominant than woman. They were equal creations of God. What does it mean? Again, on a simple level, is, hey, Eve, you got to take responsibility. You inspired him to sin. The serpent came to you, convinced you to sin, and what did you do with your influence? You influenced him to sin. So your influence now on him is going to be weakened. It's a simple, direct consequence. And there's a reality to this. The fact is that men have dominated women for thousands of years. Men are the conquerors. Men have this need to control. Men have this need to be strong. Women tend to be more dependent, more vulnerable, softer, warmer. That's their personality. So suddenly marriage is going to be a challenge because suddenly there will be different personalities, different characteristics coming to the table. You know, the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I don't know about Mars. I don't know from Venus. I know I'm from Brooklyn, and it's still hard. Marriage is difficult because it's two different personalities trying to figure out this life together. But the Lubavitcher Rebbe writes in a talk about the feminist movement. And he said the fact that the Torah tells us after the sin, V'hu yimshol bach, which meant that this was a consequence that came from the sin. Those words that I read to you in the English, that he will dominate you, was a consequence of the sin. That means that pre-sin, in that pre-sin state, it didn't have this. Men did not dominate women. So the Rebbe said this, and all women that are listening to this class, whether live or will be listening to it, listen to what the words of the Lubavitcher Rebbe said. The Rebbe said, we're taught that the generation right before Mashiach, we will start seeing Mashiach-like symptoms, showing us signs that we're close. Some ideas: the Berlin Wall falling down, communism collapsing, swords turned into plowshares, soldiers being used to bring food. These were all prophecies concerning the coming of Mashiach. We witnessed it. We saw it. We saw a Soviet Union collapse before our eyes without a single bullet being shot. We watched the Berlin Wall fall. Remember, it was just people schlepping on ropes, pulling down the Berlin Wall, which just a week ago, if you touched that wall, you would have been shot. We watched prophecies concerning Mashiach take place. The prophecies talk about Jews coming together from all over the world to Israel. My friends, we watched it happen before our eyes. First, we watched 1948 happen. Then we watched airlifts coming from Yemen and from Iraq and from all different countries in the Middle East, airlifts of Jews coming together to Israel. Jews who never saw an airplane before were being rushed onto airplanes and flown into Israel. Then we watched 1 million Jews from the Soviet Union flown into Israel with planes landing every 60 seconds with another plane load filled of Jews from the Soviet Union who we used to demonstrate in the streets for them to find their freedom. We watched them come to Israel on the wings of eagles. We watched these prophecies come true. Says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, where else do we see it? The fact that women are starting to stand up and take leadership roles. It hasn't happened before in history. Women are leaders. Women are senators. Women are congressmen. Women are judges. Women are vice presidents. Women will be president one day. It's happening. We see it happening before our eyes that women are taking leadership roles. There are CEOs of major companies that are women. What does this mean, the Rebbe said? It means that we're beginning to undo the consequence of the original sin because we're entering into a messianic era and we're going back to pre-sin state. The Rebbe encouraged us, provided that they don't sacrifice their God-given role of bringing children into this world. Understand, by all means, grow in every possible field in life, in the world, but not in the place of the greatest blessing that you can possibly do, and that's bringing a child into this world. Let's take a look at reading number 9. We're going just a little bit over time, but we're finishing up. There is a time for everything, and there's a moment for everything under the sky. There was a time for Adam to go into the Garden of Eden, and there was a time to leave the Garden of Eden. Nothing in this world is by chance. The world and the cosmos are meticulously organized according to a divine plan. When Adam entered the Garden of Eden, a moment of perfection, it was certainly not by a chance. And if it was not by chance, it must have a time designated when it must occur. Not only was his entering the Garden of Eden by design, but also his leaving the garden was by design. Don't think that it was only because of his sin that he was expelled from the garden. This is not true. His separation from the garden was not by chance, for man was given a predisposition to sin. Satan does his work for the sake of heaven. Wow, those are powerful words. So what are you gathering when you read the statements like this? It almost seems that this was all meant to be. There's a plan A, and although glorious and eternal life and Garden of Eden and effortless growth, body and soul unified, sex, conception, and birth all within minutes. Not sure everyone is excited about that one, but that was part of existence. Plan A has its advantages. But what we just read tells you that there was always a plan B in the divine plan. There was plan A and there was plan B. There always was a plan B. And in plan B, maybe we don't have all the luxuries of plan A. But what we do have is a challenge. And as I'll explain, we also have the ability to rise to an even higher level than we possibly could have climbed under plan A. The serpent and the sin of man did not throw creation off course. It couldn't, because it was part of creation itself. And part of creation allowed for free choice. God made free choice for a reason. If he didn't want free choice, if he didn't want us to ever sin, he never would have created the ability for us to sin. But he did create free choice, and therefore he did create the ability for us to sin. So the divine plan allowed for that as well. Two paths. You can choose door number one or door number two. I know in Let's Make a Deal there were 3 doors, but here there were 2 doors. You pick your door. Door number one is this life of perfection. Everything is easy. Everything is planted for you. Trees will grow on its own. Children will just come out one after the next. It's all just going to be easy. The serpent in our story was the embodiment of the Satan. The Satan in Christianity is a dirty word. But the Satan in Judaism is not a free agent. It's not the devil that has any real power. It's a creation of God for a purpose. I'm going to give you an analogy, and then I'm going a little over time tonight. I'll be finishing up in a moment so that next week we can start Cain and Abel. There's a king that has a prince, and the prince one day is going to be the king. And the king is trying to think, I need to prepare this prince to be king one day. I need to challenge him. I need him to understand the importance of being a king and the importance of overcoming challenges and temptations. So he calls in his most trusted servant, and he tells the servant, this is what I need you to do. I need you to find out in the kingdom the best prostitute there is. I need you to pay that prostitute handsomely, and I need her to try to get my son, the prince, to fall. Why? Because I want to see that he has the strength to withstand it. The servant has to do what the king told him to do. He doesn't want to do this, but he has to do this. The servant goes and finds the prostitute and pays the prostitute. Does the servant want the prostitute to succeed? Absolutely not. He wants the prince to be able to say no, but the servant has to do the duty. The serpent, the Satan, evil inclination, Yetzer Hara, all these words that were used, they're God finding ways to challenge us. And sometimes we will fail. Sometimes the prince in our story fails. But it doesn't mean you're not going to be the king. It means there's more learning to do until you reach that level of perfection. We human beings, from the moment Eve took from that fruit, chose door number 2. And in door number 2, there's going to be a process. And in the process, we're going to be tempted. There are days that we're going to succeed. There are days that we're going to fail. But ultimately, when all is said and done, and we will have learned to overcome our temptations, and we will learn how to live in a world in unity with one another, and we will learn to care for one another, and we will learn to share with one another, and we will learn to take the ingenuity of the human being and use it to make the world a better place and to make God part of our experience, all with at the same time overcoming everything the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, throws at us. We will eventually bring the world to a higher state of holiness that we could have under door number 1. So was Eve wrong for eating from the tree? Yes, she was wrong, because ultimately God said don't. But even when she did, and even when Adam did, it didn't mean it's over. It just meant you chose a different path. And ultimately, we human beings will make the case that through Adam and Eve choosing door number 2, through our efforts in repairing the world and creating this world now in a far better place, we will make this a holier world, and we will return to that Garden of Eden-like state, knowing we made it happen. We did this. We accomplished it. We put in the effort. Nothing was given to us on a silver platter. It took a lot of effort. It took a lot of work, but we did it. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Have a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope to see you Wednesday, 12:30 for my talk on Thanksgiving 2020. Go to jewishacademy.com and you'll see the links over there. Take care, everybody.